Let's dive right into an auction result that literally broke the math and sent absolute shockwaves through the automotive world. For weeks leading up to this event, you could just feel the anticipation building among collectors and analysts, but I'm telling you, absolutely no one predicted what was about to happen. We are looking at a story that completely defies traditional logic, and by the end of this explainer, you're going to see exactly why the single isolated transaction has fundamentally rewritten the rulebook for automotive valuation.
Picture this. Someone just dropped a cool $40 million on a Ferrari. Imagine walking into an ultra-exclusive auction room, taking your seat among the world's most elite collectors, and watching the bidding climb to a number that seems almost impossible to comprehend. The tension in that room must have been absolutely electric as those paddles kept going up. But here is the truly strange part about this whole thing. That is absolutely not the normal price of this car. Not even close.
The sheer absurdity of that number really hits home when we look at the original expectations. The reported pre-sale estimate for this exact vehicle was actually hovering right around $1.1 million. Now sure, $1.1 million is obviously a massive amount of money for everyday stuff, but in the realm of high-end hypercars packed with cutting-edge tech, it's actually a pretty standard, predictable expectation. That is exactly what the seasoned experts thought it would pull in.
But then, the bidding actually started. And when the hammer finally came down, the final price was roughly 36 times that original estimate. Just let that sink in for a second. 36 times. To put that into perspective, that's like going to an open house for a property expected to sell for $1 million and watching it go for the GDP of a small island. That is not your standard price increase driven by a couple of eager billionaires. That represents a completely different category of value altogether.
So it really makes you wonder, did two billionaires simply get caught in a massive bidding war and massively overpay for an electric car out of sheer excitement? Or did they buy something much more difficult to value? We really have to peel back the layers of this transaction to figure out what exactly happened in that room, and honestly, what it means for the future.
Section 1. Meet the Ferrari Luce, the object in question. To really figure this out, we first need to understand the physical object at the center of all this hype, which honestly represents one of the biggest technological pivots in the company's entire history.
Just glancing at the reported engineering specs, we are seeing some incredible numbers across the board. We're talking upwards of roughly 1,050 horsepower, a massive 122 kilowatt-hour battery, an advanced 800-volt architecture that lets it handle insanely fast DC charging at around 350 kilowatts, and perhaps the most mind-bending stat, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in a blistering 2.5 seconds. The sheer physical force of a 2.5-second launch is the kind of acceleration that literally pins you to your seat and distorts your peripheral vision. These numbers prove Ferrari is tackling electrification through the only lens they know: pure, unadulterated performance.
So how exactly are they pulling this off? Well, the reported four-motor architecture gives Ferrari an extraordinary engineering toolbox. With independent motor control, the car's software can distribute power extremely quickly to whichever tire happens to have the most grip. It allows for unprecedented torque management, essentially mimicking and honestly vastly outperforming old-school mechanical limited-slip differentials. It gives the car electronic reaction times that are light years faster than physical gears and shafts could ever dream of. It's an absolute marvel of modern software and hardware working in perfect harmony.
But here's the catch: the emotional engineering problem. Because Ferrari customers don't just buy a spreadsheet of specs, they buy an experience. They buy the unmistakable scream of an internal combustion engine, the mechanical vibration right through the steering wheel, the sheer soul of the machine. So the monumental question is, can instant electric performance and lines of software code really create the same drama as a classic roaring V12? Can an EV ever feel as viscerally special as the legendary combustion cars that built this brand in the first place?
Section 2. The perspective shift from car to artifact. And that philosophical dilemma right there, that is exactly why we need to stop looking at this vehicle as everyday transportation and completely shift our perspective. Because the buyer who just spent $40 million wasn't just picking up a production EV off a dealership lot to take out for a Sunday drive. They weren't looking for something to flex at the local car meet. No, they purchased Chassis Zero. They acquired this vehicle with the meticulous mindset of a museum curator, securing a foundational piece of history rather than just a way to get from point A to point B. Let's define what we're actually talking about here. Chassis Zero is essentially a prototype, or a special early chassis carrying a unique historical significance that a normal production vehicle simply cannot reproduce. Historically, whenever a legendary automaker pivots, think the very first mid-engine prototypes or the original homologation specials from decades past, those earliest chassis become the holy grails of the collecting world. Because while a normal production Ferrari can just be ordered again by the next wealthy customer, there can only ever be one chassis zero representing this exact singular moment in the company's timeline.
Think of it like this. Buying a standard production car is kind of like buying a movie ticket. It's easily reproduced, it's meant for mass consumption, and it holds a pretty standard, predictable consumer value. But buying chassis zero? That is like buying the original camera used to shoot the film. It is completely irreplicable and holds immense historical weight. The two objects might look somewhat similar on the surface, but the economic realities driving their worth, they are worlds apart.
Section 3. Collector Economics. Valuing the intangible. By changing our lens like this, we're introduced to a totally different equation where the standard rules of the automotive market get thrown completely out the window.
When collectors pay these kinds of extraordinary prices, they aren't paying for battery capacity or driving range or even top speed. They're paying for provenance, they're paying for scarcity, and they are paying for history. And this is exceptionally critical in the EV space, right? Because rapid technological advancements usually mean an electric car's tech is outdated in just a couple of years. But collectors at this elite level, they bypass the tech specs entirely to value the intangible elements that simply cannot be engineered in a lab or scaled up in a massive factory.
And the really crucial point here is how these physical objects behave over a long timeline. While a normal car is evaluated on its current performance and inevitably depreciates as it gets surpassed by newer tech, a historical object plays by entirely different rules. Evaluated purely on its rarity and cultural importance, the value of an original milestone can actually appreciate over time. Imagine this exact car 50 years from now, when internal combustion engines are total relics of the past. How much will the very first electric leap from this legendary manufacturer be worth then? Its significance literally only grows as time marches on.
Chassis Zero has something future production cars can never, ever acquire: the absolute distinction of being there at the very beginning of the electric era. Think about it. If Ferrari spends the next decade producing increasingly advanced electric supercars, what was the very first major physical artifact from that massive transformation? It's this car. It is the undeniable first chapter of a brand new era. And this brings us to a fascinating reality for the whole industry right now. If every luxury manufacturer can eventually build a super-fast electric vehicle, and modern engineering pretty much guarantees they will, because straight-line EV speed is basically commoditized at this point, Ferrari's true competitive advantage won't just be horsepower. It's going to be preserving their brand, their legendary badge, and their deep emotional history. That's their greatest challenge. They need the electric Ferrari to fundamentally feel like a Ferrari, and securing the artifact that kickstarted that entire mission, well, that's priceless.
Section 4. The Power of Chassis Zero. The Final Payoff. Let's pull all of this together and head back to that astonishing auction room to see what was actually purchased when that hammer fell at $40 million.
The buyer didn't just pay $40 million for a fast electric car. They purchased the irreplicable opportunity to own the precise moment Ferrari began writing a completely new chapter. Because, there can be many Ferraris, and there will undeniably be many powerful electric Ferraris built in the future. But history? History only happens once. There can only be one absolute beginning.
So knowing that this was the auctioning of a rare historical milestone and not just a standard vehicle on a lot, what do you think? Looking through this lens of collector economics, was this a brilliant purchase securing the artifact of a lifetime, or is $40 million still an unbelievable price tag to swallow? I'll leave you to ponder that one. Thanks for joining me as we unpack this explainer. I really hope it completely changes the way you look at the price tag of automotive history.